It's Secure Digital Life. Russ and Doug today are going to wrap up this year's stories about the greatest scams, Equifax, all that stuff that you've been seeing in the news. So be sure and stick around for the wrap up of 2017 on Secure Digital Life.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. And you type in AAA porn or whatever it is you're typing in. I'm sorry. I was at a PG show.
And I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here because somebody needs to know what's going on.
That's right.
Okay, so
now somebody has to drink this.
I think it's another day. It's another episode.
Yeah, he's looking at the wrong camera.
Oh, you put my camera over here. Cut. Basically, forget you ever saw that. I think actually forgetting you ever saw that would really be a good idea at this point. Ho, ho, ho. On location in Christmas land. So that's, the last episode of 2017. Thanks for joining us. Russ and I are going to wrap up some stories as other Doug was telling us from over there at the police station.
In the car,
I was going to shoot this I was in the car. I was going to shoot it in a holding cell, but we went in the holding cell, and apparently something really bad happened in the holding cell involving bodily fluids. So,
were they yours?
It was really. No, it was not mine. I'm sure I could have contributed to it, and it wouldn't have made much difference. But it was one of those things where you like open the door, and I'm pretty, robust, and it was just like, oh no, I don't think so. I'm not sitting in there for 20 minutes, so I'm not sitting in there for 5 minutes. 3, 2, 1, close the door. So yeah, that's okay. That's why we have this kind of stuff. Okay, yeah. So we're doing wrap-ups today for 2017, and I'm still getting used to looking at this camera and whatever, but hopefully I won't crash again. My Windows 10 just literally crashed and said, good night, I need to reboot, and it was out. So it said some kind of problem happened. They told Microsoft about it, but did not tell me, so it didn't matter. So I guess we were going to talk about what the most notable stuff of 2017 was, is this sort of, ubiquitous end of the year thing. And I guess mine was probably the sort of Equifax et al. Identity theft stuff. What about you?
I would say that you're right on with that one, Doug. I mean, that was pretty bad, and how it was downplayed, and they had known about it 6 months before, well, maybe about 3 months before. That's just unacceptable.
Well, and then you saw that over and over through the year, whether it was with Uber, Uber, how long was theirs? Like over a year before
2016 was the first hack that they didn't report.
And of course, all this boils back down to the fact that there are not any real laws about this, and there's not any real punitive stuff. And I know that if you watch Security Weekly, people get upset about new laws or new whatever, but there has to be some kind of consequence, or companies won't do anything about these sorts of threats because they don't really get punished for it. And in fact, in the case of Equifax, they got rewarded because
they did.
They signed me up for their service and said, oh yeah, and you get this free for a while, and then you can start paying after a year. And we're going to hope that how many people will just say, oh yeah, I'll go ahead and pay, because they're going to forget all about it.
In addition, didn't they also get a huge grant, multi-millions of dollars from the federal government in a non-compete grant for security, enhancing security?
Exactly. So it makes you wonder. I always said that about, and I'm going to get in trouble, but that's okay. It's Security Weekly. We can get in trouble. I always said that about antivirus, because way back when on antivirus, and I have no evidence of this, so please don't get agitated and start coming after me. But I always thought, who gains the most when a new virus is found? And I was like, well, the antivirus companies. I was like, so who's writing the viruses? Well, it could be, but then you get into those conspiracies, and next thing you know, you're standing outside Area 51 with a tinfoil hat on your head. So, but we could do that.
Yeah,
I've probably got some tinfoil here. And it's like, this Christmas ornament is got some metallic properties. So, welcome to the cult of Brian.
And also, Doug, what about the whole Kaspersky business, where the federal government had said, that they were disbanding or stopping the use of Kaspersky antivirus And it was. Do we still know if that's fabricated fully or not, or like
I
they?
don't think there was. I mean, they didn't truly. I mean, basically what happened in that was there was accusations that Kaspersky was involved with Russian, that there was
Right.
Russian malware in
Yep.
it, that there was on and on. And, Kaspersky vehemently denied this over and over and over again. And basically what happened at the end of the day was nothing. So I know the government suspended some use of Kaspersky products, but that doesn't mean that's going to persist. And of course, when the government says they're suspending things, it means that very, very slowly, very, 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 very slowly, the train is going to slowly start to slow down. And sometime over the next 3 to 5 years, it might stop, or who knows, things could change and they'll just, hit the gas again.
And
So
they did the
it's really
same
hard.
thing. They did the same thing with DJI, the Chinese company that manufactures the drones. And they had said that they had no idea what was being created, whereas Kaspersky at least opened up their code supposedly to a
Right.
third-party reviewer. DJI hasn't done that I know of, and so the U.S. government is saying, all right, well, we don't want to use your drones because we don't know if there's any malware in them or what could possibly happen. So it's
Well, but
interesting.
a lot of that's very difficult to manage as well
Right.
because I don't know this about the drones, but I know that other things are embedded in other things, and this drone company may be making drones under 55 different names, and they take the drone, the drone software and hardware, and they put a different case on it and sell it, and it may be being sold as U.S. Air Force Model 5079,
Right.
because I mean it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't have any evidence of that.
Hmm.
My other things that I think I saw the most of in 2017, right off the top of my head, um, were new identity theft based scams.
Hmm.
I mean, this seems to be the most common thing I keep getting asked questions about all year. And it just seems to be an ongoing trend. I mean, a lot of people know about these scams now, but apparently a lot of people don't. I mean, I get at least 2 or 3 calls on my office phone a day with the, hello, this is Agent Schaefer at the IRS FBI Service Center. You are in violation, and it's like, and they don't even bother with a human now. It's just robocalls
Yep.
trying to get you to call them back. So they're definitely monetizing that. I think that's going to get worse, and we'll talk. I've kind of got that at my end game there about what would get worse. So basically, in the Equifax wrap-up, this was a disaster for most consumers. If you're out there and you're a consumer, which is what all of you are, if you can afford to watch this, you probably are listed in Equifax, and your data was probably compromised by Equifax. So what does that mean for you? Well, we had sort of told you freeze your credit reports and start keeping an eye on it. And if you don't have a service, you probably need one. And I've been getting notifications regularly. Every time my credit like twitches for something, then I get a notice from one of these services telling me, this was done and this was done. And a lot of those things are really hard to figure out because it's like, well, here was this thing or here was an inquiry and you don't know what they are. So sort of try to get up to speed on what those reports look like and what yours looks like. So it's kind of like managing your network.
Hmm.
Start monitoring that and learn what the baseline looks like so that you have a feel for it, just like you would if you were monitoring a network and you get a feel for it and the ebbs and the flows of all the different traffic. And that way, when something anomalous starts happening, you'll have a better handle on it. And you can say, wow, that's something I've never seen before on my credit report. And that way you don't overreact, but it also means you don't underreact as well.
Yeah, and be mindful of those companies that supposedly monitor your credit for a monthly fee. Lifehacker did a very good job writing an article comparing the services right around the time of the breach. And they came up with, depending on what you're trying to do, maybe one or two might be okay. But really what they can't do is, well, they can actually, because in one case you can even give them power of attorney, which is kind of interesting. But it doesn't substitute. It's not meant to substitute for your continuous monitoring. Every year you're entitled to a free copy of your credit report, all three of them. So, excuse me. Make sure you take advantage of that. You know.
And watch for the fees. I think Russ
Yep.
made a really good point because one of the things I've noticed with all these services is that all of this is just about getting you used to paying fees for these things. And this is standard marketing strategy that's been used for every product since the dawn of time.
Hmm.
And any kind of subscription service, whether it's cable TV, cell phones, or anything else, the idea is to get you used to it and ease you into it. So once they ease you into it, you start using the service and you find you can't live without it. That's what they're trying to do. And then, of course, then they can jack the fees up. Because if Netflix calls me today and say they're going to raise the price of Netflix to $1,000 a month, I'm probably going to pay. Because I mean, I can't live without
Right.
Netflix now at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I would start shaking or something.
Yeah.
All right, moving along. How about shadow brokers? So shadow brokers, WannaCry, Bad Rabbit, on and on and on. All of these, if you don't remember from the year, are ransomwares. And ransomware, if you don't remember, you probably do, is of course where malware gets on your machine, encrypts your drive. Some of it's capable of jumping to cloud-based drives, so encrypts your online storage, encrypts your backup files, encrypts everything you have. Then you get a contact at the end of all this, usually after a while. It's all encrypted and it says, hey, would you like to have your data back? Please send this many bitcoins to this. Now, there's a big problem right now because a lot of these were priced in base bitcoins. So saying it's 5 bitcoins, whatever, and now it's like, well, that would be $1 million.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a problem with that at this point. But ransomware was certainly one of the big stories of the year in terms of WannaCry and Bad Rabbit and on and on and on and all the and shadow brokers, of course, started all this with stealing material from the NSA. So releasing those tools allowed people to develop better ransomwares and on and on and on and all. Of course, those were exploits and what have you. So we won't get into all the grim details. But what do you think about that one, Russ?
I think that's great. Very good point. And something I hadn't thought about prior to this is with the meteoric rise in the stock market of or in investment of the Bitcoin. What used to be, they'll say 0.35, send us 1/3 of a Bitcoin, and we'll send you the encryption key. Now what used to be $300-400 is now close to 35,000. So I absolutely agree, and but if what you're going to talk about in a minute or two, Doug, also is like what rather than paying them, make sure that you have your backups up to
Right.
date so that you don't have to worry. And I know you're going to talk about that, so I don't want to steal your thunder.
Well, you already did.
Sorry,
You
good, but good, yeah.
Oh, okay. I quit. No, Russ is right, and one of the things that you should be ready to do is make sure you have good backups. And I know we've said this, and everybody knows this, and you've heard this over and over and over and over again your whole life. Have backups, and then of course you don't. But you really do need to have some backup strategy, and you also need to test that strategy for restoration. You may well get hit with ransomware. It's very difficult to avoid this either from a perspective of phishing and spear phishing type attacks, which all branch off of identity theft, whether it's just because you went and downloaded a game or you downloaded a file that you thought was legit or you got an email that had malware attached to it. All those things can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how much you know about this stuff. There will come that point where they send you something that really grabs you and you click it. And then if you get ransomware, if you don't have some kind of out of band, and so this is the thing I want to reiterate to you, out of band means your backups are somewhere that can't be accessed. So figure out one more time, what is it that you can't live without? Find a way to back that up on a very long, like pictures are a good example of things people really want to preserve, family pictures or whatever, and they're all on, your hard drive. That's the one I've had people call me and say, I have 25,000 pictures of my, family. I want them back. And, what if I don't pay these guys? Well, then you're not going to get your pictures back. So have that stuff out of band, whether it's on DVDs, it's on other drives that are not attached. The most common way to do this, of course, is to put this on an external hard drive that you detach. But you got to remember to do that.
And the key point too, Doug, is detached and out of band is because if you do somehow get ransomware or malware on your machine, one of the things it does is it spreads, and guess where it could spread to? A NAS device, a type of network area storage, and that would be bad because now your backup is encrypted as well, and so all would be lost. So what Doug's saying is absolutely 100% important. Is make sure that it's out of band, that it's not attached directly all the time.
Yep. And you can go back and check out, we had shows about this during the year. So if you want to go check them out and read more about that, or you want to know more about it, write a comment or post a question, and we can do more about that again. I'm going to add one for us here, which is Bitcoin.
Oh yeah.
I didn't put that in the show notes because wow, can you believe I didn't think about Bitcoin? Yeah. It's hard to blink your eyes in the news today without seeing the word Bitcoin. And certainly Bitcoin has been like a crazy ride for the last month or so.
Yep.
And yeah, if you bought Bitcoin, 5 years ago, you have a lot of money right now. Feel free to donate any of that to us if you'd like.
Or even in January.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime would be good. I mean, today, tomorrow, whatever. But I mean, Bitcoin has been going crazy. What do you think about that, Russ?
I think it's absolutely right. I mean, it's risen 1,200% since just January, and before that 5 years ago, yeah, what was it? It's pennies on the dollar, so to speak. And
Yeah.
now you're looking at what did it close? It hit 20,000, close to 20,000 last week, yeah, right before Christmas, and now what is it 17,000? It took a dump. Last week, and now certain people are getting nervous, but they think it's going to correct. But anyway, the point is it's a very volatile market to be in right now as cryptocurrency. So
Well,
good.
anytime you look at financial trading,
Yeah.
and if you look at a stock, you pick a stock, IBM or whatever,
Hmm.
you have a chart for that stock. You can look at what that stock did historically,
Right.
and that historical behavior is a guide. It may not hold up because that's a fallacy too, is
Hmm.
that what something did in the past is what it's going to do in the future. But the problem with things like Bitcoin is it's very new. So unless you have money to burn, and want to risk it. So
Yep.
you're basically taking whatever money you take and you're putting it on double zero in the casino.
Yep.
And yeah, you may win. I mean, absolutely. And you may lose.
Hmm.
But if it's money that you can afford to lose, then fine. But I mean, the price is very high right now, and no, but nobody knows what that price should be. And
Right.
then unlike IBM stock, which somebody can look at and say, well, it's trading at 122, it should be trading at 115. Probably not a good time to buy. With Bitcoin, nobody really knows, should it be trading at 5,000 or should it be trading at 50,000? And that means that if you're putting your money down, you're pretty much just gambling.
Hmm.
And and you're gambling with even less information than you have in a casino.
Hmm. And if you do invest, as Doug mentioned, in one of our shows a few weeks ago, make sure that you don't lose your key, because then you lose your money, your wallet. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. That's bad. And make sure that you are very careful with what you do if your key is digital. Who you don't share with anybody, first of all, but make sure that whoever's accessing your computer, that you have that in a separate physical space so that they can't access it.
absolutely. I mean, and I've been asked that by a couple of people. Both cases of people asked me, they had set up Bitcoin wallets. They'd never put anything in them, but both times they had lost the keys because their hard drive crashed or whatever.
Hmm.
And they said, "Can you get my keys back off my hard drive that's dead?" And it's like, "No, I can't." And well, I could, but it's going to cost a lot of money and it's probably not worth it. So remember, if you set up a Bitcoin wallet and you put money in it, it's just like a real wallet. In fact, it's much more like a real wallet than anything else because it's just like that cash in your wallet.
Hmm.
If you lose that wallet, if it falls overboard on the cruise ship, if somebody steals it in Rome, if a guy pulls a scuba knife on you in a bus station in Atlanta, not that anything's ever happened to me, um, and takes your wallet away, that's going to be gone, and you're going to have a massive problem if you have a lot of cash tied up there. So all that to me is still very flaky, and I'm not a very giant risk taker type investor. So if I was rich, maybe I would be, but I'm a little nervous about sticking my money in there. And yeah, I know I could have made a whole bunch of money, but
Hmm.
that's life.
That's
We'll
live.
we'll just have to work for Paul.
Yeah.
Um, Last thing on this, voting machines and SCADA was another big story in 2017. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion about voting machines being hacked, about SCADA being hacked. There was some controversy in the Ukraine. The electrical system was taken down. There have been a lot of other discussions about SCADA. And I sort of lump voting machines into SCADA because all those sort of proprietary products that are out there in the world, are very unique. And I haven't worried as much about the voting machines because all those voting machine hacks were very targeted. And yeah, you can hack a voting machine. Don't get me wrong. They were doing it at DEF CON and so on. But the thing is that not everyone uses the same voting machines. And so you say, well, yeah, but they're all lousy and they could all be hacked. And it's like, yeah, but a lot of those hacks involve you being there physically. So it would take a pretty significant effort to really target the voting machine system. SCADA is kind of like that because the electrical grid is sort of the same way. There's a lot of proprietary stuff out there. It's not exactly, time to panic and run for the hills. But we all do need to be more aware of the risks from these vectors out there in the world.
Hmm.
You have any feelings about that, Russ?
No, I think what you said is perfect. I mean, I remember voting machine controversy all the way back from George W. Bush and issues from in Florida that were going on during that election that people were crying foul about voter machine fraud and all that kind of thing. And I think Diebold that was the company that they were targeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's still the company or different companies make different machines, but the premise is the same. So. And one of the things that they're looking into right now, granted this is mostly theoretical, is this idea of using blockchain for voting.
Right.
So instead of one person, one vote, it's one device per person per vote kind of thing. So, that might be an interesting.
And if you had very good token mechanisms to identify people via blockchain, via their device, then yeah, to me that's like one. If you could replace this ancient, antiquated voting system with something where I go, okay, well, who am I going to vote for? This guy. And you could validate that with my fingerprint or my facial recognition or whatever. And yeah, there's always ways around all that stuff. Hey, guess what? There were ways to write fake ballots and stuff them into physical ballot boxes too. So all the haters out there saying, "Oh, we got to get back to the old ways," where people filled out a piece of paper and stuffed it in a box. I'm like, yeah, that's where ballot box stuffing came from. So if we had a really good way to identify me, and a really good blockchain that would manage all that and would be very difficult for someone to compromise. It seems to me like that the solution to the whole voting problem is in blockchain and good tokenized methods, which we're looking for now because we need them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need methods for our devices to be able to identify us effectively for all sorts of purposes, whether it's purchases or whatever. And I don't see any reason why purchases, identity at a door, and voting is not all pretty much right in the same, sort of bailiwick of let's dump this in a blockchain, and you won't have any voter fraud then. Oh, well, you probably will. Somebody will figure out a way to get around it. But again, there's always something. So don't panic about all that stuff. So finally, I'll give you my biggest threat of 2018 going forward, and I'll let Russ give you his. He has some that are the same and some that are different. My biggest threat, when I thought about it for next year, I'm looking at it over here, was essentially the threat to your data. And this is, of course, the identity threat problem. We're continuing to see this just spiral. The ability of people to get into people just don't realize how much information about them has been collected by, everybody from your doctor's office to your dog groomer, to your credit card company, to the bank, to the government, to the school. And all of those are different systems with different levels of security, and every single one of them is a threat. Many of them are unregulated, many of them are not managed, and many of them have never focused on any sort of security. So the ability of a person to get into a repository of data, particularly things like top secret clearances and things like that, extract that information and then use that to spearfish you is a continued and growing threat. My other threat I would probably throw in there is the lack of ability to identify us with, whether by blockchain or something. So, and then I'll let Russ give us his.
So I think that in my opinion, the number one threat in 2018 is going to be, and we've seen it a little bit in 17 already, is educational institutions. And I think that because of somewhat poor methods of securing people's accounts and things of that nature, that those institutions are going to be the ones that are the most vulnerable. You might ask, well, why? Who cares? Why is it all about? Who cares whether I find out if John Smith's grade is what is? But what's important is Social Security number, which for 147 million Americans, that's already out there. But Social Security number attached to addresses, telephone numbers, and in some cases, healthcare or health insurance information or health data. What shots they've had and so on and so forth. So education or higher education, well, actually it could affect K-12 as well, but education in general, I think that's number one. And number two is I'm wondering about the security of healthcare institutions as the nation is moving more towards now standardized databases for storing patients' information. I wonder how that is going to impact or be targeted by specific nation states or even individual hackers or groups. So those are my two.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. So this being the last show of 2017, I guess I will say, I hope you had a good, secure year, and I hope that we can all continue doing this out into the future. Coming up in 2018, well, I skipped ahead a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming up on the 9th, we hopefully, unless something weird happens, we're going to have Congressman Langevin on to talk about net neutrality again, which is a big deal right now. And then we've got another guest. If you have topics you want to see during the year 2018, I sure hope you will send them to us, because we would love to talk about what you want to hear about. And so let us know about those things. Other than that, Happy New Year. If you're a fan of the Dark Tower, Fin Diagno, and all that good stuff. Here.